However, what surprised investigators even more was the painful story behind this woman. Not only was she the perpetrator, but she was also a victim of her own life. At 19, Yang Shi had her eyes gouged out by her first love. At 21, she was abandoned by her first husband. And by 26, she was tortured by her second husband, as if in medieval times. In just 7 short years, a once young and beautiful girl had been turned into a murderer. But what drove her to this point? This is a true story. Subscribe to our channel to uncover the hidden secrets behind this case. Case setting: Huajialing, a small village nestled at the foot of a mountain in Hanzhong City, Shanxi Province, surrounded by dense forests and sprawling tea fields. It was September 29, a gloomy morning. From halfway up the mountain, agonizing screams suddenly echoed down, breaking the usual peace of the area. The villagers, accustomed to such sounds, muttered among themselves, "It must be coming from the home of Zhao Ziqian again." 5 years ago, Zhao Ziqian married a blind woman named Yang Shi. Since then, their home had been filled with constant arguments and violence. Initially, the villagers tried to intervene, but after being threatened by Zhao Ziqian, no one bothered with their affairs anymore. When the screaming stopped, the village fell silent again. However, near dawn, a faint voice called out from the village entrance. The sound persisted long enough to make some villagers curious enough to open their doors. In front of them stood Yang Shi, covered in blood, staggering. She trembled as she said, "Help me. I've killed my husband." At first, the villagers couldn't believe what they were hearing. Yang Shi was blind. How could she possibly have killed Zhao Ziqian, a notoriously aggressive man? But faced with Yang Shi's current state, the villagers decided to go to her home halfway up the mountain. There, a horrifying scene awaited them. Zhao Ziqian lay in a pool of blood, apparently dead, while Yang Shi's 2 sons cried beside him. The villagers immediately called the police. Within an hour, an investigative team from Hanzhong City arrived at the scene. The police quickly secured the area and began their examination. Zhao Ziqian's body lay on the floor with multiple axe wounds and blood splattered everywhere. The blood-stained axe lay nearby. Some household items were in disarray, but there were no signs of significant resistance from the victim. This led investigators to suspect that the case was not purely self-defense. Yang Shi, the blind woman, was taken to the police station. On the way, she remained calm, showing no fear or panic. In the interrogation room, Yang Shi did not deny her crime. She calmly admitted to killing Zhao Ziqian and even requested the death penalty, as if this was something she had long awaited. The police asked her to recount the details of the crime. Yang Shi began speaking in a steady tone, devoid of any emotion. She described how she used the axe, how she swung each blow at Zhao Ziqian. Every detail was precise, leaving no moment unspoken, making the officers hold their breath. The meticulousness of her account was chilling. However, when asked why she committed the crime, Yang Shi's expression changed slightly. Her voice turned hoarse, and her blind eyes seemed to gaze into a void. She began recounting her life of suffering and misfortune. Yang Shi detailed how she was forced into marriage and how Zhao Ziqian turned her life into a living hell. She spoke of beatings, verbal abuse, and his cruelty in using their children to control her. One interrogator, unable to contain his emotions, had to leave the room. Yang Shi's story was not just a confession, but a tale of a woman driven to the edge, where death seemed to be her only escape. Yang Shi was once the pride of Niti village, where she was born and raised. As the most beautiful girl in the village, she stood out with her fair skin, bright eyes, and modern fashion sense. At 17, Yang Shi decided to leave the village to explore the world. She moved to Guangzhou, worked diligently in factories, and saved money to pursue her love for photography. However, her dream of freedom was short-lived. At just 19, her mother unexpectedly arranged a marriage for her with Tao Hongbing, a worker at a sand mine. Tao's father was the village party secretary, a man of influence in the area. Yang Shi fiercely opposed the marriage, but under family pressure, she was forced to return home, her heart heavy with disappointment and the sense that her life was being dictated by others. Tao Hongbing was Yang Shi's first love, but their relationship was not voluntary. Despite his apparent affection, the differences in mindset between a modern girl and a rural man led to constant conflicts. Worse, Tao Hongbing's mother disliked Yang Shi, often criticizing her as too showy and unsuitable for their family. Her harsh words deepened Yang Shi's despair. One day, while Yang Shi was picking tea leaves on a hill, Tao Hongbing approached her. They quickly got into an argument. In an uncontrollable rage, he tackled her to the ground. He spewed venomous words, claiming she didn't deserve his love. Then, in a fit of madness, he gouged out her eyes with his bare hands. You heard that right. He used his hands to gouge out her eyes as if in a horror film. Her agonized screams echoed, but no one arrived in time to save her. Tao Hongbing took her eyes and fled down the hill, leaving the young woman writhing in excruciating pain. Yang Shi's once bright eyes were now nothing but bloody voids. After fleeing, Tao Hongbing went to the police station to turn himself in. He confessed to the crime and was sentenced to death. However, no punishment for him could erase the pain Yang Shi had to endure. After the incident, Yang Shi was taken to the hospital. Although her life was saved, she permanently lost her sight at the age of 19. Yet the physical pain was nothing compared to the mental torment that awaited her. Following the horrifying event that blinded her, Yang Shi became reclusive, locking herself in her room and refusing to interact with anyone. During those dark days, Zheng Kun appeared, bringing promises of a brighter future. He claimed to be a kind-hearted man, willing to do everything to help Yang Shi recover, even promising to take her to Xi'an for eye treatment. Yang Shi's family was skeptical of his proposal. However, in her desperate situation, Yang Shi chose to trust Zheng Kun. His marriage proposal seemed like the only light piercing through her dark life. But soon after their wedding, Zheng Kun revealed his true nature. Instead of taking Yang Shi for treatment as promised, he brought her to his impoverished home, leaving her in disappointment. Yang Shi's dream of regaining her sight shattered once again. Accepting her reality, Yang Shi tried to build a life with Zheng Kun. Not long after, she gave birth to a baby girl, naming her Tu as a reminder of the hope she once had. However, their shared life quickly became a burden. Zheng Kun revealed his laziness, sleeping all day and pushing all household chores onto Yang Shi, a blind woman. Exhausted, Yang Shi still tried to maintain the marriage for the sake of her daughter. On one occasion, she took little Tu to visit her mother's home, accompanied by Zheng Kun. There, his arrogance and irresponsibility enraged Yang Shi's mother. In front of the whole family, Yang Shi's mother pointed at Zheng Kun and scolded him as a useless man. Instead of feeling remorse, Zheng Kun stormed off in anger, leaving Yang Shi and their daughter behind, never to return. Zheng Kun's departure left a huge void in Yang Shi's life. Once again, she was abandoned, thrust into the depths of loneliness and helplessness. With no other options, she and her daughter returned to her mother's home. But even in her birthplace, Yang Shi faced the scornful glances of her sister-in-law and the gossip of villagers. They saw her as a burden, a woman doomed to be abandoned by men time and again. In 2001, when Yang Shi seemed completely crushed by her fate, a glimmer of hope appeared once more in the form of Zhao Ziqiang. He was 16 years her senior, a poor farmer from Huajialing. Zhao Ziqiang's family initially strongly opposed the marriage, arguing that marrying a blind woman like Yang Shi would only add to their family's burdens. But Zhao Ziqiang was resolute, claiming he loved Yang Shi and was captivated by her beauty and gentleness. From Yang Shi's perspective, she agreed to remarry to avoid burdening her mother and sister-in-law, hoping to find some peace after years of relentless suffering. The wedding was simple, with no lavish decorations or banquets. Due to the treacherous terrain, several men from the village took turns carrying Yang Shi over the mountains to Zhao Ziqiang's home. Upon arriving at her new home, Yang Shi's heart sank with disappointment. The three-room house was old and fragile, with crumbling mud walls and a leaky thatched roof, surrounded by only 5 other households at the foot of the mountain. Zhao Ziqiang, having lived alone for half his life, acknowledged that he could never marry a healthy woman. He chose Yang Shi, thinking she had no other options. In the early days of marriage, Zhao Ziqiang treated Yang Shi well, helping her adjust to mountain life and appearing to be a caring man. Yang Shi, despite feeling despondent about her circumstances, tried to adapt and accept her situation. Not long after, Yang Shi became pregnant, bringing a glimmer of hope to their lives. However, this event marked the beginning of a terrifying change in Zhao Ziqiang, turning their marriage into a bottomless abyss. As her pregnancy advanced, Yang Shi could no longer work as before, which irritated Zhao Ziqiang. He frequently found excuses to beat her. Due to her pregnancy, Yang Shi once again endured the abuse in silence. After Yang Shi gave birth to 2 sons, one might have expected family harmony, but Zhao Ziqiang became even more violent. Loud verbal abuse escalated into frequent, baseless physical beatings. It seemed Zhao Ziqiang's main objective was to ensure offspring, with no affection whatsoever for Yang Shi. Initially, Yang Shi tried to scream for help or plead when being beaten, but her cries only fueled Zhao Ziqiang's anger. Gradually, she became emotionally numb, no longer crying or shouting, silently enduring the abuse so as not to disturb her children's sleep. Yang Shi's resignation only emboldened Zhao Ziqiang. He not only attacked her but also physically assaulted villagers who tried to intervene. On one occasion, when Yang Shi's mother visited and saw her daughter living in such misery, she couldn't hold back her tears and scolded Zhao Ziqiang. The beastly man didn't just ignore her, but also brutally beat both Yang Shi and her mother. This scene left a deep scar in the heart of the frail, elderly mother. Yang Shi knew that reporting to the police would only result in a divorce, and she couldn't abandon her children. For 5 years, Yang Shi endured in silence, but her limits were eventually broken. On September 29, 2006, after 3 days of heavy rain, her foot fungus flared up again, and she sought to treat it with dried tobacco leaves. She borrowed the leaves from an elderly villager. Ironically, Zhao Ziqiang was playing cards with the same man at the time. After the game, the old man handed the leaves to Zhao Ziqiang to bring home to Yang Shi. But when he returned home, Zhao Ziqiang did not deliver the leaves and instead expressed anger, claiming Yang Shi had humiliated him by borrowing items from others. Instead of his usual beatings, he brought her a bowl of cold water and forced her to drink it all. What terrified Yang Shi the most was that she was menstruating at the time. Zhao Ziqiang knew this, yet cruelly used the cold water as a form of punishment. Yang Shi swallowed the water in humiliation, thinking that compliance might spare her another beating. However, she had no idea this was only the beginning of a nightmarish ordeal. After drinking the cold water, Yang Shi bathed her children and put them to sleep. Only when they were quiet did she step out of the room, seeking a moment of peace in the dark night. In the dead of night, Zhao Ziqiang suddenly shoved her awake. His face was flushed and his breath reeked of alcohol. He roared that he had dreamt of Yang Shi sleeping with another man. Before Yang Shi could respond, Zhao Ziqiang grabbed her by the hair, dragged her off the bed, and pulled her to the center of the house. When he returned, he carried 2 items, a shiny axe and an old rope. Pointing to the objects, Zhao Ziqiang coldly declared, "Tonight, you have 2 choices. Use the axe to end your life or hang yourself with the rope. If you're still alive by morning, I will make you wish you were dead." He didn't stop there, continuing to threaten, "If you don't do as I say, your children and your entire family will not survive." These words struck Yang Shi like a dagger, leaving her trembling with fear from head to toe. After speaking, Zhao Ziqiang threw both objects to the floor, collapsed onto the bed, and began snoring as if nothing had happened. The house was engulfed in an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of his snores echoing in the dark. Yang Shi groped her way to the bedside, where the axe and rope lay discarded. She touched the axe, feeling its cold metallic surface. A horrifying thought flashed through her mind. Tonight, only one of us will survive. Gripping the axe tightly, Yang Shi followed the sound of Zhao Ziqiang's snoring. She raised the axe high and struck the first blow, aiming directly at him. Zhao Ziqiang woke up, grabbing Yang Shi's leg in pain and panic. Fear and fury surged within Yang Shi, pushing her to the breaking point, and she lost all control. She wielded the axe, striking him repeatedly. Each blow was decisive, strong, and instinctive, releasing years of pain and humiliation she had endured. With the final strike, Zhao Ziqiang lay motionless on the floor, his body lifeless in a pool of blood. Yang Shi gasped for breath, still clutching the axe, her entire body trembling. Tragically, her 2 young sons, aged 3 and 2, had woken up and run out of their room. They witnessed the horrific scene of their mother killing their father. After regaining composure, Yangshi groped her way through the darkness to leave the house. Step by trembling step, she descended from the mountainside to the village. She sought help from villagers to report herself to the police, and everything unfolded as described at the beginning of this story. When arrested, Yangshi did not resist. On the contrary, she voluntarily confessed to her crime. At the time, she was only 26 years old. In the interrogation room, Yangshi calmly recounted the entire incident with a chillingly detached tone, as if she were narrating someone else's story. It was only when the police asked why she did it that her expression changed. Her blind eyes seemed to focus on a void, and her hoarse voice broke the silence. This was the first time in my life I got to decide something for myself. Yangshi's confession left the police both sorrowful and haunted. But regardless of her motives, a life had been taken, and she had to face justice. After investigating and considering the circumstances, the court sentenced Yangshi to 12 years in prison. The trial ended in a somber atmosphere, and anyone who heard her story couldn't help but feel deep sympathy for her plight. In prison, Yangshi finally found some peace. In an interview, she shared, "At least here, I have people to talk to. Some kind inmates advised me not to seek a reduced sentence because life outside might not be as stable as it is here." However, her heart remained heavy with worries, especially about her 3 children. She felt immense guilt for letting them witness such a horrific scene. Determined to make amends for her children, Yangshi strived to behave well in prison, hoping for an early release and a chance to reunite with them. Her efforts were recognized, and Yangshi was granted an early release. After her release, Yangshi sought out her 3 children. Her eldest daughter, too, had been adopted by a welfare organization in Xi'an. When they reunited, Tu seemed distant from her mother's affection. Undeterred, Yangshi resolved to show her love through actions. She said, "I know I've made mistakes, but I'll do everything to prove to you that I love you." Yangshi's eldest son, raised by his aunt, was shy when meeting his mother. Holding his hand, Yangshi wept and explained, "I had no other choice. I hope you can understand and forgive me." Hearing this, the boy began crying, and the two embraced each other tightly in an emotional reunion. However, her youngest son, adopted by another family, could only address her as aunt instead of mother. After reuniting with her children, Yangshi felt as if a weight had been lifted from her heart. Reflecting on her suffering, she said, "Love needs to be nurtured, and I will do that for my children." Eventually, Yangshi found her own happiness. She became engaged to a blind man who worked at a massage parlor for the visually impaired. Though their life wasn't luxurious, happiness was found in small, everyday moments. Together, they planned to save money and open their own massage parlor in the future. This is a deeply tragic case. While editing this story, I couldn't hold back my tears. This video ends here. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found it intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any upcoming fascinating stories. In 2016 in Ecuador, 2 Argentine students, Marina Menegazzo and Maria Jose Coni, were brutally assaulted and murdered while traveling. Their bodies were found not far from Montañita Beach, wrapped in plastic bags. Notably, after the crime, the 2 suspects confessed, but their inconsistent testimonies and unclear DNA evidence raised suspicions of a cross-border human trafficking ring. The complex investigation spanned years, revealing suspicious details like the victims being drugged and inconsistent times of death. Although the main suspects were convicted, the case left many unanswered questions, haunting concerns about travel safety and justice for the victims. Don't take your eyes off the screen. Like and follow the channel now to uncover this chilling mystery with us. Our protagonists: Maria Jose Coni, 22, and Marina Menegazzo, 21. 2 energetic students from Mendoza, Argentina. Seeking to escape academic pressure, they plan to explore South America during their midterm break. On January 10, 2016, Maria and Marina, along with 2 friends, began their journey through Ecuador and Peru. The first days of their trip were filled with joy, with radiant photos shared on social media. Beaches, colorful towns, and happy smiles lit up every moment. But the fun soon took a turn. On February 13th, the group parted ways. Maria and Marina decided to stay in Ecuador for a few more days to explore Montañita. a beach famous for its wild beauty and lively nightlife. Meanwhile, the two friends returned to Mendoza, unaware that it would be the last time they would see Maria and Marina. Montanita, a backpacker's paradise with its long beaches and vibrant festival atmosphere, welcomed Marina and Maria with bright sunshine and non-stop excitement. Maria and Marina quickly adapted to life there. To save money, they began selling fruit and hamburgers on the beach, also experiencing local culture. With just $10 a night, they rented a small room near the beach. Their social media updates captured every dreamy moment in Montanita, swimming under golden sunlight, watching sunsets on the sand, and enjoying simple yet adventurous dinners. This charm kept the two girls staying there longer than originally planned. On February 21st, Maria and Marina planned their next travel steps, hitchhiking to Guayaquil, flying to Lima, and then continuing their journey back to Mendoza. On the morning of February 22nd, Maria and Marina called their families to share their travel plans and reassured them they'd return home soon, so there was no need to worry. That afternoon, the girls called again, reporting they had lost $70 at the hostel and would hitchhike to save costs. Maria reassured her family that they would have no phone signal for a few days, but would contact them upon reaching Lima. However, that was the last time their families ever heard their voices. On the morning of February 23rd, Maria and Marina did not arrive in Guayaquil as planned. Their flight from Lima to Chile on February 25th did not include passengers named Maria Jose Coni or Marina Menegazzo. By February 27th, after days without any news from the girls, their families' U20's anxiety turned into panic. Phones rang non-stop, with friends and relatives repeatedly asking the same question: where are the girls? Marina's sister was the first to raise her voice on social media. She posted a photo of the two girls smiling under the sun with a desperate message: "My sister and her friend have been missing since February 22nd in Montanita, Ecuador. Please help us find them." The post quickly spread. Communities worldwide began expressing concern. Prayers, worried comments, and shared updates flooded in. The media did not miss the chance to cover the story, broadcasting the incident across Ecuador. Hours later, Ecuador's then-president, Rafael Correa, unexpectedly responded on social media, promising a police investigation and sending his condolences to the girls' families. Ecuador awakened to this mysterious disappearance. However, hope soon turned to frustration. Maria and Marina's families contacted the airline to check if the girls had left Ecuador, but the airline refused to release information without a court order. There was no information indicating that Maria and Marina had crossed the border or arrived in Guayaquil. Growing unease began to take hold as their parents started to suspect the girls had never left Montanita. News of Maria and Marina's disappearance continued to spread across social media, not only in Ecuador, but also in Argentina. This led to the two nations joining forces to organize search campaigns, hoping anyone could provide information. On February 25th, a man accidentally discovered a large plastic bag in an area about 200 meters from Montanita Beach. Inside was the body of Maria Jose Coni, tightly bound and wrapped with ropes. 2 days later, on February 28th, the body of Marina Menegazzo was found just 40 meters away from Maria's discovery site. The horrifying truth began to emerge, but mysteries only deepened. Questions arose. Why did it take 3 days to find Marina's body, despite it being so close? How could the police fail to locate the second body just 200 meters away from the first? Maria Jose Coni was tightly wrapped in a plastic bag and burlap sack with ropes bound around it. Marina Menegazzo was treated similarly, but her body bore even more horrifying signs of torture. Autopsy results revealed that Maria suffered severe head trauma. Multiple injuries on her body, including genital trauma, and numerous bruises and abrasions indicated she had been tortured before her death. Marina was stabbed 6 times, with wounds running from her chin to her cervical spine. Scratches on her face and body, along with marks of restraint on her wrists, showed she was subdued before being brutally murdered. Both were determined to have died in the early hours of February 23rd, only minutes or hours apart. The case shocked Ecuador and the international community. Media and public pressure forced Ecuadorian police to hold an emergency press conference on February 28th, announcing the arrest of 2 suspects. The suspects, Alberto Segundo Mina Ponce and Aurelio Eduardo Rodriguez, nicknamed El Royo, were arrested at Mina Ponce's home through DNA traces left on the victims. Police also found bloodstains, Marina's mobile phone, her backpack, and several personal belongings of the 2 girls at the scene. The most shocking revelation was the suspects' swift confession. Both admitted to the crime easily, but their stories were riddled with inconsistencies and suspicious details. According to their initial statements, the 2 suspects met Maria and Marina at a bar in Montanita on the evening of February 22nd. The girls were looking for a ride to Guayaquil after losing their money. El Royo offered to help and took them to Mina Ponce's house. Then they left to return to the bar, leaving Maria and Marina alone at the house. This statement raised suspicions as police noted a lack of convincing details. The suspects claimed they returned around 2 a.m., drunk. When Maria and Marina rejected their sexual advances, the girls were restrained and brutally murdered. Mina Ponce confessed to hitting Maria on the head with a metal object when she resisted. Hearing the commotion, Marina screamed from the next room and was stabbed 6 times by El Royo to silence her. However, inconsistencies in their stories persisted. Why would the girls easily go to their house? And why would they agree to stay alone after the suspects left? This fueled suspicions that this was not merely a random murder. After the crime, according to El Royo's testimony, he left the scene around 3 a.m., leaving Mina Ponce alone with the 2 bodies. Haunted by the presence of the bodies, Mina Ponce decided to clean up the scene. He wrapped both bodies in burlap sacks, tightly bound with ropes, and used a cart to transport them. Maria Jose Coni's body was dumped first about 200 meters from Montanita Beach, in a dense wooded area. He thought no one would find it. Then, he returned to deal with Marina Menegazzo's body. However, the details he provided left the police skeptical. Could just 2 people commit such a crime, or were others involved? Besides the suspects' statements, police also gathered testimony from 2 key witnesses, a bar owner and a taxi driver. These individuals provided additional insights into Maria and Marina's final hours. The bar owner vividly recalled Maria and Marina arriving at his bar around 2:30 p.m. on February 22nd. They were exhausted, looking for someone to give them a ride to Guayaquil. Moved by their plight, the bar owner offered them a free bottle of water. However, Maria declined, explaining they had no money because they had been robbed earlier that morning. Eventually, he decided to give them a glass of water before they returned outside. Shortly after, El Royo arrived at the bar. The owner recounted how he struck up a conversation with Maria and Marina. After a brief exchange, he led them out of the bar and towards Mina Ponce's house. The taxi driver's testimony corroborated this. He stated that he picked them up on El Royo's signal. Maria and Marina sat silently in the back seat throughout the ride, speaking no words and appearing very tired or scared. The taxi driver described the vacant, fearful look in the girls' eyes as if they were struggling with an invisible terror. They didn't look like the happy tourists usually seen in Montanita, he said. The driver's uneasy feelings about that trip made his testimony even more credible. With witness statements, the police gained more insight into the events. However, deeper investigation revealed contradictions in El Royo and Mina Ponce's stories, complicating the case further. In reality, Maria and Marina were not short on money. Contrary to the suspects' claims, clear evidence showed Maria had withdrawn cash from an ATM near their hostel in Montanita just before their disappearance. This proved they had the means to pay for a hotel rather than resort to the dangerous option of hitchhiking. This contradiction weakened El Royo and Mina Ponce's credibility in the public eye. The question arose, why would the girls take such a risky option when they could afford safer alternatives? When Marina's brother joined the investigation at the crime scene, he discovered used syringes on the floor. However, when he returned to inquire about them, the syringes had mysteriously disappeared, leaving no trace in the forensic reports. Forensic experts denied the existence of the syringes, raising suspicions that evidence might have been hidden. The victims' families increasingly believed that Mina Ponce and El Royo were not only perpetrators, but also pawns in a larger conspiracy, potentially a human trafficking network. Under mounting suspicions, a second autopsy was conducted, along with toxicology analyses. The results shocked the public when the timeline of Maria and Marina's deaths was revised. According to the findings, Maria died on February 23rd, but Marina's death was determined to have occurred on February 25th. This meant that when Maria's body was discovered, Marina might still have been alive, enduring torture for 2 more days. This detail explained why the 2 bodies, just 40 meters apart, weren't discovered simultaneously. Marina might have been moved or hidden during this time. Initially, Ecuadorian police claimed heavy rain on the day Maria's body was found had hindered their discovery of Marina. However, weather data revealed there was no rain in the area that day, completely discrediting the police's excuse. Moreover, during the second autopsy, numerous unidentified DNA samples were discovered, but there was no basis to determine their origin. Meanwhile, Mina Ponce changed his testimony, no longer blaming El Royo or himself, but accusing a Venezuelan man nicknamed El Chamo. He claimed this man was the real mastermind. El Chamo, accused of being a drug trafficker, was arrested for investigation. However, he firmly denied all accusations, willingly taking a polygraph test and providing DNA samples to prove his innocence. DNA analysis at the crime scene identified traces belonging to Mina Ponce, Maria, Marina, and some unidentified samples. However, none matched El Royo or El Chamo, leaving the police increasingly baffled. El Chamo was cleared of suspicion after DNA testing and presenting solid alibis. Once again, the investigation's focus shifted back to Mina Ponce and the unidentified DNA samples. Mina Ponce's shifting testimony and the unidentified DNA highlighted a chilling possibility. Could this have been a coordinated conspiracy involving more perpetrators than the initial 2 suspects? Public outrage extended beyond the crime itself to question the transparency of the investigation. Could such a gruesome murder in Montanita be only the tip of a larger criminal iceberg? The first trial took place on a morning in November 2019, attracting significant international attention. Both Mina Ponce and El Royo appeared tense, avoiding eye contact with the victims' families. In court, the prosecutor outlined the full chain of events that the 2 suspects were accused of committing. Evidence, such as bloodstains, personal belongings of the victims, and witness testimonies, was presented in detail. Initially, Mina Ponce stuck to his confession, admitting to killing Maria when she resisted. He claimed El Royo was directly responsible for Marina's murder. However, under questioning by the victim's lawyers, he became visibly uneasy and contradicted himself. El Royo denied all accusations, asserting he left the scene before the murders occurred. However, DNA evidence and the taxi driver's testimony confirmed his presence at the house during critical moments. The prosecutor focused on the timeline of death determined by the second autopsy. They emphasized that Marina endured 2 days of torment before her death, demonstrating cruelty beyond a typical murder case. Unidentified DNA samples were presented as evidence, suggesting this was not an isolated act. The prosecutor questioned whether a human trafficking ring or other individuals not yet apprehended might have been involved. The trial took a dramatic turn when a new witness appeared. A woman under special protection testified that she had seen Mina Ponce and El Royo meeting with a group of strange men in Montanita days before the crime. Her testimony ignited speculation that the 2 suspects were merely enforcers, while the real masterminds remained at large. In their defense, Mina Ponce's lawyer attempted to mitigate his client's culpability by claiming he was coerced by powerful figures behind the scenes. However, this did little to obscure the clear physical evidence. El Royo, under pressure from opposing lawyers, admitted to helping Mina Ponce conceal the bodies, but insisted he was not the direct perpetrator. The victims' families sat silently in anguish as the details of Maria and Marina's final hours were recounted. They demanded justice to its fullest extent, not stopping at the 2 men on trial. The trial dragged on with conflicting testimonies and a stream of evidence. Public opinion divided. Some believed Mina Ponce and El Royo were solely responsible, while others suspected a larger criminal network. Ultimately, Mina Ponce and El Royo were each sentenced to 40 years in prison for murder and body concealment. However, this was not the end. The prosecutor announced an expanded investigation to clarify the involvement of other individuals. The unidentified DNA samples were sent to international labs for comparison against global databases. Maria and Marina's family vowed not to stop until all those responsible were brought to light. They launched campaigns for justice, drawing international media and public attention. Media coverage of the verdict was skeptical. Articles questioned whether justice had truly been served, or if this was just the visible part of a much larger iceberg of crime. As the trial concluded, the victims' families left the courtroom in silence. Their expressions of pain and determination became symbols of their relentless pursuit of truth. The case remains unresolved. Under the weight of new evidence, the journey for justice for Maria and Marina continues, serving as a haunting warning to backpackers worldwide. This video ends here. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found this video engaging, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more fascinating cases. In 2009, in Australia, a family of 5 was brutally murdered while sleeping. Their bodies were severely disfigured, requiring DNA testing for identification. The perpetrator was none other than the brother-in-law, Shay Lian Bin, a relative of the family. The reason behind his actions stemmed from pure greed and jealousy over the family's wealth. Moreover, Shay Lian Bin adopted Lin Ya after murdering her adoptive parents, only to abuse the girl for a long period of time. This video will uncover the dark secrets, tragic stories, and horrifying truths about one of the bloodiest chapters in human history. Please like and subscribe to our channel to explore it with us right now. On the morning of July 18, 2009, at 6:35 a.m., the newspaper delivery employee for the Lin family's stall in Epping, Sydney, arrived as usual. However, the stall's door remained shut, unlike every other day. He felt something was amiss. By this hour, the owner, Lin Min, would usually have opened the door and prepared for work. He immediately called the owner to check, but no one answered. Anxiety started to rise. However, the employee decided to continue his deliveries, even as an uneasy feeling lingered in his heart. Around 9:30 a.m., with no call back from Lin Min, the employee contacted Lin Min's sister, Lin Shu, asking her to check on the situation. Lin Shu tried calling her brother, but there was no response. She decided to visit Lin Min's house with her husband, Shay Lian Bin. Around 10 a.m., Lin Shu and Shay Lian Bin drove to Lin Min's house. As soon as they stepped out of the car, they sensed something was wrong. The front door was wide open, but the house was eerily silent. Lin Shu hesitated but stepped into the house, her unease growing stronger. Entering Lin Min's bedroom, she noticed the curtains were drawn tightly, leaving the room in darkness. Suddenly, Shay Lian Bin rushed from behind and held her tightly. He shouted, "Don't look, get out now." But it was too late. She had already caught sight of the horrifying scene. On the bed lay the lifeless body of Lin Wenli, Lin Min's wife. Her body was covered in blood, and her face was so disfigured it was unrecognizable. Lin Shu screamed in panic, broke free from her husband's grasp, and ran to the next room. There, Lin Min's sister, Lin Yun, also lay motionless on the bed, pale and lifeless. She then rushed to the children's room where Lin Han and Lin Dao were slumped near the wardrobe, both deceased. Lin Shu trembled, unable to stand. Her senses were paralyzed by the horrifying scene. She shakily called the police, her voice breaking. They're all dead." While Lin Shu tried to stay calm waiting for the police, Shay Lian Bin suddenly called his father-in-law, Lin Yangfei. He quickly said, "Father, something terrible has happened at Lin Min's house. I'll come pick you up now." Lin Yangfei, who was in Maryland, Australia, not far from Epping, but without direct transport, agreed to wait for his son-in-law to arrive. Lin Shu overheard the call and protested vehemently. "Why are you leaving now? I can't stay here alone. What if the killer comes back?" Her voice trembled. However, Shay Lian Bin seemed indifferent to her concerns. He simply said, "I have to go. Staying here will only cause more trouble." He then left, abandoning Lin Shu to face the horrifying scene alone. Lin Shu felt helpless, panicked, and furious, but had no other choice. About 20 minutes later, the police arrived at the scene. they began cordoning off the area and conducting forensic examinations. When questioned, Lin Shu told the police her brother's family had been murdered, but her brother, Lin Min, was not present at the scene. This statement raised a major suspicion for the police. Could Lin Min be the killer who fled the scene? Initially, the police only recorded 4 bodies. However, upon closer inspection of Lin Min's bedroom, they discovered his body hidden under the blanket. This discovery eliminated the theory that Lin Min was the killer, confirming that this was a massacre targeting all 5 family members. Immediately after discovering Lin Min's body, forensic experts began their examination. Preliminary results showed that all 5 victims in Lin Min's family died from blunt force trauma to the head. Some bodies were so disfigured they couldn't be recognized by their faces. To accurately identify the victims, forensic experts had to rely on DNA tests, body measurements, and clothing. This led the police to conclude that the perpetrator acted with extreme hatred, not just the intent to kill. Although the victim's home was covered in blood, none of the property was disturbed or looted, ruling out robbery as a motive. During the investigation, police found that the perpetrator had cut off the power supply before committing the crime, plunging the house into darkness. However, the killer still navigated and identified each victim's location with precision. Analysis of the crime scene revealed that the perpetrator seemed very familiar with the layout of the house. Every room was opened except one, the room belonging to Lin Ya, the eldest daughter of the family. Lin Ya, the adopted daughter of Lin Min, was studying abroad in New Caledonia on the day of the incident, which spared her from the tragedy. Strangely, her room was untouched, as if the perpetrator knew for certain she wasn't home. These clues suggested that the perpetrator was someone close to the Lin family, or, at the very least, someone familiar with their habits and routines. On September 8, 2009, Lin Min's family funeral was held at Olympic Park. The atmosphere was filled with grief. Lin Ya, the sole survivor, hurried back from New Caledonia to bid farewell to her family. Throughout the ceremony, Lin Ya stood silently, leaning on her grandmother Zhong Feng Jin. Her tear-streaked face could not hide her immense pain. When her grandmother's heart-wrenching cries rang out, Lin Ya broke down into uncontrollable sobs. Lin Ya's teacher, who had been concerned about her mental health since the incident, was also present at the funeral. Observing Lin Ya, the teacher noticed something unusual in one corner of the gathering. Xie Lianbin, Lin Shu's husband, was repeatedly questioning Lin Ya in Mandarin, his tone tense and aggressive. Meanwhile, Lin Ya kept her head down, tears streaming down her face. Although the teacher didn't understand Mandarin, she felt that Xie Lianbin's tone was threatening. Concerned for her student's safety, she immediately reported his suspicious behavior to the police. In fact, the police had already suspected Xie Lianbin due to his earlier odd actions. On the day of the discovery, he had tightly held Lin Shu to prevent her from seeing the bodies, a strange reaction for someone witnessing a crime scene. When Lin Shu pleaded for him to stay at the scene to guard against the perpetrator returning, Xie Lianbin insisted on leaving. This raised suspicions that he knew for certain the killer wouldn't return. Moreover, Xie Lianbin's physical description matched the profile of the suspect the police had constructed. He frequently played badminton, was in good physical shape, and had a key to Lin Min's house, allowing him unrestricted access. He also knew about Lin Ya's absence due to studying abroad. Shoe prints found at the crime scene ranged from sizes 8.5 to 10.5, while Xie Lianbin's shoe size was 9.5, a perfect match to the evidence. This coincidence placed him at the center of the investigation. Before moving to Australia, Xie Lianbin was an ENT doctor in China. However, his career faced challenges after immigrating. Unable to find suitable work, Xie Lianbin relied on financial support from Lin Min and his wife to open a Chinese restaurant. Unfortunately, the local market was saturated, and the restaurant went bankrupt in 2005. Since then, Xie Lianbin stopped working and depended on stock investments to make a living, but his unstable knowledge led to inconsistent earnings. In contrast, Lin Min's newsstand flourished, generating annual revenues of up to 1 million Australian dollars, which made Xie Lianbin extremely envious. Police speculated that Xie Lianbin's motive was likely rooted in greed, intending to seize control of Lin Min's newsstand. After the murders, he and Lin Shu quickly took over the business. Connecting the clues, the police theorized a plausible scenario. On the night of the crime, Xie Lianbin gave Lin Shu sleeping pills to ensure she wouldn't wake up. He then quietly went to Lin Min's house. After cutting off the power, he used a heavy object, possibly a hammer, to kill the three adults, Lin Min, Lin Wenli, and Lin Yun, instantly. Finally, he used the same method to kill the two children. After committing the murders, he disposed of the weapon and returned home to sleep, as if nothing had happened. Suspicion alone wasn't enough. Police needed direct evidence. They decided to keep this theory confidential to avoid jeopardizing the investigation. At this point, a crucial detail caught the investigators' attention: the guardianship of Lin Ya, the 15-year-old girl who had just lost her entire family. Xie Lianbin, who was considered the prime suspect, quickly expressed his desire to adopt Lin Ya. Police found this move unusual. However, since Lin Ya's grandparents, Lin Yangfei and Zhang Fengjin, were elderly and unfit to care for her, the authorities had to carefully deliberate their decision. Ultimately, they decided to let Lin Ya stay at Xie Lianbin's house, but under strict monitoring to ensure her safety. The reason the police agreed was that Xie Lianbin acted when Lin Ya was abroad, suggesting he had no intention of harming her. However, this was only a temporary measure as they continued to seek evidence to solve the case. By late 2009, after noticing Xie Lianbin's increasingly suspicious behavior, police decided to implement surveillance measures. They began wiretapping his phone calls. On January 19, 2010, police secretly entered Xie Lianbin's house to install micro cameras, hoping to capture incriminating actions or confessions. During the surveillance period, police observed that Lin Shu was showing signs of depression. The loss of her loved ones made her sensitive, vulnerable, and easily manipulated. Lin Shu clung to her husband, whom she considered her only support during the crisis. Thus, she agreed to all of Xie Lianbin's demands, despite many of his actions being highly suspicious. However, Lin Shu was also a key witness in the case. Her initial statements supported police suspicions against Xie Lianbin, but over time, her testimony changed inexplicably. In her first statement in July 2009, Lin Shu admitted that she was unsure whether Xie Lianbin left the house on the night of the murders. She also said he had tightly held her to prevent her from seeing the bodies. But just a few months later, she changed her testimony. This time, she firmly stated that Xie Lianbin never left the house that night. She explained that she was very sensitive to sound and would have woken up if he had. When police suggested that Xie Lianbin might have given her sleeping pills, she immediately denied it, saying it was impossible. These contradictions raised even more doubts. Lin Shu even changed details about the crime scene. Initially, she claimed to have seen the bodies before Xie Lianbin held her back. Later, she said he held her first before discovering the bodies. Through covert video surveillance at their home, police discovered that Xie Lianbin frequently told Lin Shu, "The police are suspecting me. You must stand by me. Only I can be with you forever." These manipulative words led police to believe that Xie Lianbin was exploiting Lin Shu's vulnerability to conceal the truth. The video also showed that Xie Lianbin appeared to have absolute control over the household, and Lin Shu's actions and words were heavily influenced by him. To test Xie Lianbin's reaction, police provided Lin Shu with false information, claiming they found bloody footprints at the crime scene matching a pair of Asics sneakers, Xie Lianbin's favorite brand. Police further stated that the shoe size from the footprints perfectly matched Xie Lianbin's size. After revealing this, they closely monitored his reaction through the cameras. That evening, Xie Lianbin appeared flustered. He searched through old shoeboxes at home, soaked them in water, shredded them, and flushed the pieces down the toilet. This behavior did not escape the police's notice. On January 11, 2010, after gathering additional evidence, police secretly sealed off Xie Lianbin's house without his knowledge. They began a 4-day operation to collect evidence. On May 13, 2010, a crucial discovery was made in Xie Lianbin's garage. An oval-shaped stain measuring 2 centimeters in length and 6 millimeters at its widest point, dubbed stain number 91. Initially, it was dismissed as an ordinary stain. Upon reanalysis, Prosecutors confirmed it to be a bloodstain. This stain contained the DNA of 4 victims: Lin Min, Lin Han, Lin Dao, and Lin Yun. Surprisingly, stain number 91 also contained the DNA of an unidentified woman. In May 2011, more than a year after the crime, police decided to arrest Shi Lianbin. Immediately after his arrest, Lin Shu scrambled to testify on behalf of her husband. Meanwhile, Lin Yanfei and Zhong Fengjin, both in their 80s, tirelessly fought for justice for their family. In December 2015, the trial of Shi Lianbin officially commenced. Shi Lianbin faced sharp questioning from the prosecutors, but continuously insisted, "I didn't do it." Lin Shu even testified that her husband had an alibi, claiming he never left home on the night of the murders. However, complications arose when forensic experts confirmed that the unidentified DNA in stain number 91 could belong to either Lin Shu or Lin Ya, which weakened its evidentiary value in implicating Shi Lianbin. Shi Lianbin's defense lawyer argued that the blood stain could have been left accidentally before the crime occurred. This caused the trial to reach an impasse, creating an opportunity for him to evade justice. Seeing that Shi Lianbin was about to be acquitted, police couldn't remain idle. They approached one of his cellmates, referred to as Inmate A, offering reduced sentencing and a $4,000 reward in exchange for information from the suspect. Inmate A agreed and quickly built a close relationship with Shi Lianbin. He bragged about his connections to corrupt police officers and offered to help clear Shi Lianbin's name if they became friends. Over time, Shi Lianbin began trusting Inmate A and vented his frustration and resentment toward the Lin family. Shi Lianbin claimed he was wealthier, smarter, and more capable than Lin Min, whom he saw as a common laborer. He also expressed bitterness about not receiving respect from Lin Yangfei and Zhong Fengjin. During one conversation, Shi Lianbin confessed that he had given Lin Shu sleeping pills to carry out the crime. He also admitted that picking up his in-laws was a pretext to dispose of the murder weapon. When police presented the gathered evidence to the judge, they still faced challenges. The judge ruled that the evidence was insufficient to convict Shi Lianbin. After 4 years of interrupted trials, on December 8, 2015, Shi Lianbin was acquitted. However, the case remained shrouded in unanswered questions. At this point, a shocking twist occurred. A letter from Lin Ya, Shi Lianbin's adopted daughter, was sent to the prosecutor, revealing disturbing allegations. Lin Ya claimed that she had been a victim of prolonged abuse since 2008, and it was time for the truth to come to light. In the letter, Lin Ya detailed how Shi Lianbin began harassing her when she was just 14 years old. After the tragic deaths of her family, Lin Ya moved in with Shi Lianbin. However, the following months were far from peaceful. She endured abusive behavior but remained silent for years, not understanding the severity of the situation at her young age. These revelations dealt a significant blow to Shi Lianbin's image, which had been portrayed as a victim of a flawed legal system. Prosecutors quickly reopened the case. They revisited overlooked evidence, particularly the infamous stain number 91. With the new evidence, Shi Lianbin was summoned back to court. On January 12, 2017, the jury reached a near-unanimous decision. 11 members found him guilty, with only one dissenting vote. The court officially sentenced Shi Lianbin to life imprisonment without parole for 5 counts of murder. This verdict not only served justice, but also brought solace to the victim's surviving family members. Upon hearing the verdict, Shi Lianbin maintained an eerie calmness. He even smiled and waved at his lawyer. His cold demeanor silenced the courtroom, but outside, tears from the Lin family spoke volumes. Finally, after years of relentless struggle, justice was served, and the surviving family members could begin to find peace. Lin Ya, now an adult, appeared strong before the media. She stated that her decision to speak out was not only for justice for her family, but also to protect other potential victims. She asserted that no matter the challenges, the truth must always be revealed. This video concludes here. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found it engaging, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more thrilling stories.